Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Ramsey, voice of the Billikens, and this is Two Man Game, and my partner is Matt Rocchio. Matt, we've been talking hoops for a long, long time, and now the opportunity is here on the eve of the college basketball season. Rocc, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Bob. How you doing tonight?
Well, again, we're ready to start college basketball, and it feels like it's almost been two seasons that I've really been up close and personal with college basketball, and it does seem like yesterday, and then sometimes a long time ago, when postseason got canceled, while we the Billikens had our morning practice in Brooklyn, across the street from the hotel, and it ended postseason, and it was that week, you remember, that in the NBA, now I know other people pay attention to other things, but my cue that COVID was real was that first week of March, like 2 days before it broke out in the NBA. And we are going to talk a lot about the NBA as this show goes on and the season goes on, but the NBA kind of triggered it. The dominoes fell, postseason was done, and then last year we didn't travel. We weren't courtside, and I literally, and then more figuratively, felt removed as if the season didn't even exist. I didn't get to talk to any of the players on the phone and through Zooms and things to players and coaches shows, but it's just not the same. So for all those things, and because it's the start of the season, I'm fired up.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited. I mean, obviously, the damper came in a little bit when it comes to the SLU season, but basketball is back. Especially in this region. I think the funny thing about starting a basketball podcast is there's going to be those people, especially when you mention, and we're going to talk about the NBA, who are going to immediately want to just down it because that's how it is. But I mean, I think what hit me was, I think it was 2 years ago, the Post-Dispatch did this incredible research piece talking about the history of high school basketball and the reaction they got for the rankings of all-time St. Louis basketball players. I had never seen a piece outside of the Cardinals get that kind of reaction locally. Yeah. Just people commenting and getting in discussions on Twitter about it. And that was when it hit me that the basketball fandom in this city, especially when you talk about high school and St. Louis University, it is absolutely rabid. And so to get a chance to finally talk about it, a big thank you to Mike Claiborne and Claibs Online, obviously, for giving us his chance, and a big thank you to our sponsors as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited, obviously, to talk St. Louis U, to talk NBA, and especially every once in a while to get some guests on to talk about the high school scene. You're a good friend, obviously, of Earl Austin. A staple in the St. Louis media community, and getting him on to talk a little St. Louis high school sports and the guys coming up. I mean, we're going to talk a lot about Yuri Collins tonight, but there's one of these episodes where we're going to talk about his little brother who's absolutely already turning heads and lighting things up.
At St. Mary's, that's exactly right. So we'll always defer to Earl when it comes to basketball. And we'll be able to strong arm him onto the show at some point, without question. And as you get ready for this season and know that, and when you talk about the core basketball fan in this region, it's really interesting. And I think sometimes the basketball fan doesn't really get the credit. Oh, it's a baseball town. Well, yeah, it is. There's no doubt about it. I'm as hardcore baseball as it gets. But when you talk about what club ball has been doing for the last 35 years, and continues to do, and maybe at its greatest height, perhaps right now, there was a big peak in the 90s with Jahidi White and Chris Carrawell and Kelly, all the guys that came through in the 90s. But it might really be at a peak right now, churning out Division I and high Division I and ultimately NBA talent this past decade. And this pipeline feels like it's continuing to grow. So while I do really believe that there is a large segment of St. Louis fandom that's kind of a pro sports town first, the hardcore basketball fans know their stuff. They really do. And it starts with the grassroots at basketball. It goes to the colleges, St. Louis U, Mizzou, the Illini, who, and I know we'll talk about the Illini a lot as this season goes on with such high expectations in the Big Ten.
Free Kofi.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And then when you, and then on into the NBA, and, you know, I was only sort of kiddingly talking about if Jordan Goodwin gets to the league this year, I'll be in with both feet. But with Tatum and Beal and others, there's the connection in the NBA. And for anybody who doubts the interest in the NBA in this town, just go look at the research. Look at the NBA playoff television ratings in St. Louis. That's all you need to know. Go look it up, and you'll see that it is true that the NBA is alive, at least in the hearts of basketball fans in the St. Louis area.
Also, if the Wizards are winning and we have Earl on, just try to get him to stop, not mention that the fact that the Wizards are winning with his cousin coaching that team.
That's right.
So we're going to talk plenty of NBA, but with SLU opening up their season tomorrow night, tonight is going to be a lot of SLU talk, obviously. Their game's opening up, the season's opening up. 3 games in 4 nights. We're going to talk about 2 of them and really just how we see the season playing out tonight. That's going to be the big thing today with Rammer and Rocc here on a 2-man game. So getting right into it, I think, obviously, big thing to talk about, SLU, huge loss in Javonte Perkins. It's been talked about a lot. The really quick news on that, he's having his surgery on Thursday. So obviously, thoughts out to Javonte. Hopefully the surgery goes well and everything like that. Looking at the lineup now, obviously there's a lot of scoring to replace. There was already a lot of scoring to replace when you looked at Hassan French and Jordan Goodwin going out. Now it's even more. A point Frank Cusimano made earlier today was that they're the only team that doesn't have a double-digit scorer returning from last season at all.
Yeah.
From a Division I, one AA or Division I school.
Although I'm going to pull a fast one, a typical Rammer. Anybody that's listened to me on the radio over the years, you know I'm always going to look for little ways to beat the game. My Kobayashi Maru changed the question. I believe
transfers don't count.
I believe DeAndre Jones scored.
Transfers don't count. Transfers don't count.
We're looking for points.
Returning player.
We bring them in. Okay,
that's true, but and that's definitely going to matter. But returning player, so no returning player in double digit scoring from last year. That's going to be a big thing to overcome. So, where is the scoring going to come from? I think is the very first question. I think the answer to that is from a lot of different people.
Well, let's break down the situation. I think some people would say it's not conservative, but I think Javonte Perkins, 30 minutes, 20 points a game. I'm convinced he was going to score 20. It's only 3 more points. That's only another tray or 3 free throws.
I think you're underselling it, honestly, even.
Yeah.
So I think you're being fine with it.
30 minutes, 20 points. So how do you do that? Well, the first answer is, Jordan Nesbitt, the local kid transfer from Memphis, who, by the way, still counts as a freshman this season. Well, keep in mind that he was already going to play minutes. I'd say very conservative, 20 minutes with Perkins in the lineup, very conservative 20 minutes a game, very conservative. And I'm very confident he would have been scoring in double digits. Now, does that mean 10 points or what does it mean? I don't really know because now that's not the reality anymore. So if he's playing 20, okay, he makes up, he can go to 30, let's say, and take 10. You still got 20 minutes to replace and maybe as many as 10 to 12 points to replace. And I think that's where we start to get into the weeds is where that's going to come from.
And one big thing I want to throw out here, because this kind of jumped out at me. Travis Ford earlier today said that he could have already seen pre-Javonte's injury, he could have already seen Jordan Nesbitt playing 20 to 25 minutes per game. Yeah, which I thought was bigger than I expected, even prior to or even after that kind of late preseason charge where Jordan's name started popping up every time he talked about it. And so now, I mean, them going up to 30 minutes or so, depending on how he's playing that night, isn't that's not out of reason at all. I mean, that's honestly what I kind of expect at this point.
Let me talk about Jordan
especially when you talk about his positional versatility, which I think you're going to get into.
Yeah, let me talk about Jordan Nesbitt for a moment. And I admit I could be wrong. I'm not a scout, but I think he's got the most talent the Billikens have had in a single player since Larry Hughes. When people understand what I'm saying, I'm not saying he's good as Larry Hughes. I'm saying since Larry Hughes. But the question is, and it's a huge question mark, and that is, can he take that talent and turn it into production? I'm not predicting production. I'm just saying I see the talent. I see a guy who can shoot the three. I can see a guy who's got mid-range game. I see a guy who can take it to the hole and throw it down with the best of them. And I see a guy who's got legit point guard handles. That's the entire package, plus the size to go with it. That's the entire package. How does a kid who played hardly at all last year, so really you're talking 18 months of not playing much basketball at high competition level, how do you take those accolades and that observation and how does he turn it into production? I don't know. He could jump out right away and be dynamic. It could take a half a dozen games. It could take a dozen. It might take a year. But mark my words, if he stays the course, the talent is there and the production will come. I just don't think there's any realistic way to predict when. I hope it starts tomorrow night against Central Arkansas. But you mentioned the positional versatility. In one of the preseason games, Travis looked at him and said, "Hey, J-Nez, you got the 4." And he snapped his head over him. 4? So he's getting him ready to guard the 4. Mm-hmm. He's played 3, the 2, and he has already played a ton of point. This guy is going to get tons of minutes, and we'll just see where it all fits. Moving on to some other players about the scoring. Here's a guy, another one I don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow night or in non-conference play or conference play or next year. But when you talk about Andre Lorenzen, the big Swede, this is a kid that has an unbelievable shot at 6'9". He is he's not as big as Rob Lowe was, those who want to go back a decade, but he has the same elements in his game to be able to be 6'9", have that size, and step out and confidently hit the 3. Is he ready to give you a ton of minutes day one? I don't know that. But I know that when you talk about playing two bigs together, don't just talk Okoro and Linson. I think Lorenzen's going to be in that mix sooner or later. I really believe it. This kid's got the kind of game that can be a legit stretch 4.
Let's get into some numbers games really quickly because a quote that's going around from a lot of people is Travis Ford talking about having an 8-man rotation.
Yeah.
Sudorando tweeted that out. Great quote and great job by Sudorando, as he always does. My question for you before we get into the actual numbers game is, when he said that, do you think he was saying he has an 8-man game and he's looking for people to expand on that? Because he talked about who's going to get the minutes. Who's going to fight for those minutes at the back end? Do you think he was saying, I got 8, who's gonna be the back guys on that 8? Or do you think he was talking more of a hard 8-man rotation that we're going to see get the overwhelming clump of the minutes?
I think what he's saying is that he sort of had it figured in his mind before Perkins got hurt, and that an ideal legit big-time team's probably going to play 8 guys significant minutes. Mm-hmm. I think, though, that there'll be a search for a while, that there'll be a search and that it'll get spread out between 10 and 11 guys. And I think that those are minutes to be earned. And I think I think he's saying that publicly because he wants his players to hear it and know that it's out there. And I think it's motivational. And I think that guys who earn the opportunity and produce on the court are going to play. And I think he won't be able to stick to 8 because there'll be some guys who aren't quite ready for prime time who have talent. And there'll be some guys that you didn't expect who will step in and earn 8, 9, 10 minutes a night, 12 minutes. And I think by the time you get double-digit minutes, 10 minutes is starting to be significant minutes if a guy comes off the bench for 10 minutes or more. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it ends up being 9 or 10 guys.
That wouldn't shock me at all. And 2 questions on those lineup as we get into the numbers. How do you see, because you've obviously had a chance to see some practices, how do you see the transfer guards, I should say specifically, DeAndre Jones and Rashad Williams, how do you see them fitting in? My read right now is that we're not hearing a lot about Jones in kind of a good way, in that he's solid, he's playing the game that Travis wants to see from him, while the Rashad comments I've heard seemed that he's struggling a little bit more to find the rhythm or the system that Travis wants from him or wants him to play within. And so I'm wondering, what do you think we'll see from these transfers? How do you think they're going to factor into the lineup?
I think those are great questions and 2 huge questions for the Billikens. I think Jones, they're looking at this time as more of a true point guard. Is he the backup? Is he the third point guard? Those things often are dictated by circumstances in a given game. I think there's been some frustration for Travis that he wants DeAndre to really get the offense and run it. And what's unfair to DeAndre is got one of the best point guards in the country who is the ringleader, who is the heart and soul, who does run it. And so the comparisons, it's going to be glaring for a new guy, no matter how good you are. So I think DeAndre's got a few things to do there. And I think I haven't seen him. And I think because he's trying to earn his point guard stripes first, haven't seen him shoot the 3 a lot, even in practice. And we know it's there. We know because he did it at Central Arkansas for a number of years at a high rate.
Yep.
When you go to Rashad Williams, here's a guy I think every time he shoots the 3, I think it's going in. You can see.
I think he does too.
He exudes confidence. You're so right. He exudes confidence. The thing that it's impressed me, and I haven't talked to Coach about that, and there might be some technique and nuance that I'm missing, but I like the way he gets after it defensively. And
Coach is going to like that too.
Yeah, that may earn him minutes that he otherwise might not get if the 3's not falling yet. I think it's a matter of time for the 3. I really like the way he gets after it, shooting the ball.
And the main reason I wanted to ask about the transfers is because when you factor them in, talking about numbers again, that's 9 guys when you think about who was here last year, in addition to Okoro and Nesbitt, the guys that are also new but have pretty much slotted themselves in at the 5 and somewhere 1 to 4 respectively. And so now we're at 9. And so I think a lot of people saw that top 8 thing and they put up a list, and that was what their list was. And they got to 9 and they were wondering, what is this going to mean? Because without Javonte, the thought process is if you can, get as many people on the floor and spread it out, that's going to be the best for you. And so, and then you also throw in a name like Lorenzen. I also have to wonder about a guy like Marcus Strickland, because he's such an athlete that when you talk about going small, the way they're going to, where they're going to be 4 out, and where TJ Hargrove is your starting 4, and you're already talking about Nesbitt getting some time at the 4 as well. He's a guy who can play 2 through 4 because he's such a great athlete. And then now we're at 11. I'm getting way ahead of myself. At the same time, this Linson and Okoro news, them playing together in lineups, is interesting to me, because that seems to be a risky play to put out both of your nominal 5s at the same time, just as a stamina, fouls, conditioning kind of thing. I just wonder, where's the, where, as you said, is there another guy that they're thinking about for a body as a 4 or 5 just because they want to put Linson and Okoro together?
Don't forget about Traore.
That's my point. Yeah, that's what I was getting at, because now we're at 12.
They really like him, but he is a project, and one that they're very excited about, by the way. A lot of times when a guy says, oh, Rocchio's, what about Matt Rocchio? Well, he's a project, means he's not in the plans right now. I'm talking about a kid that they really think is going to develop and they can build around over the next 4 years. I think the Linson Okoro thing, this is my view only. I don't think we'll see that for extended stretches. In some games, maybe not at all. And then in some games, you'll need to play it. And I think you'll see it as kind of a high-low thing. Neither are accomplished jump shooters. And it can get clogged up. But I think they can play that. There's an opportunity to play that.
I think so.
Just a little bit. And I think a lot of it will do with matchups and game situations. I think you're more likely to see the 4-out running of the Bills lineup. And there can be some variation, but off the top of my head with Yuri Collins and Janez and TJ Hargrove and Gibson and Okoro. That group can run anybody in the country into the ground. But you got to get the defensive rebound first. So you say, okay, we're playing with one big. Okay, you still got to get the defensive rebound before he can run. So, one thing leads to another. But so you got the extreme where you go Linson and Okoro. Do you want to throw Fred Thatch in there? And this is your defensive unit, half-court game unit. And then you go with the running of the Bills unit where you get out and fly. But, you've got – and then probably there's some gray area depending on the situation and foul trouble and who's hot and matchups that you can mix and match a little bit. I think that eventually it'll be seen, this kind of versatility and depth will be seen as a real strength.
So talking about kind of having Linson and Okoro as your 2 different 5s that you're going to run that 4-out off of, how do you see it so far through the exhibitions in practice? How do you see the difference in how SLU is playing both offensively and defensively when those guys are the 5 for each lineup? And I'm sure that, there's a lot of variables on who else is the other 4 guys in the lineup, but nominally, defensively and offensively, have you seen any big differences from those 2 units essentially?
To be perfectly honest, and we got to do this, I think, to establish ourselves in the 2-man game here on Claibs Online, the offense hasn't been good in practice. Now, you've been playing each other since the summer. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows all the plays. I get all that. But Travis has railed on the guys a little bit in practices. He has not been as happy with the efficiency and with the shooting generally. I think it's understandable because of all the new people and on the eve of the season, basically having to revamp your personnel and minutes. So I'm not excusing anything. Heck, they average 87 points in the 2 exhibition games. And this is a team that's going to score over 80 points a game this season. My question is, how many will they give up? And but so far, the offense is not where Travis wants it yet. I think I'm very comfortable saying that.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, with a guy like Okoro in the middle on defense, do you think he's providing the rim protection at the expectation that we've all seen?
Even I don't think there's any question about it. If he plays 4 years, he's going to challenge the shot blocking records of French and Melvin Robinson and Ian Viukas and those guys, that Willie Reed, those guys that came before him. He'll challenge it. I'm not ready to say he's ready to break them all. I'm just saying this guy's going to block a lot of shots. And on the other end, we already saw it the other night in the exhibition game, standing flat-footed directly under the bucket. He got 4 dunks. I'm not talking about running down, getting a running start on a fast break. I'm talking about getting it in low and going straight up and dunking it. He's going to be a force around the rim. And then Martin Linson is the human big man clinic. He plays perfect basketball. And so the two, I think, complement each other very well. Now, the rest of the guys understanding how to work with them to enhance their abilities without taking away from the perimeter game, that's what's going to take the time, I think.
Also, speaking of career records, he doesn't even have to put up his career average if he plays the full season. Yuri Collins is going to be the career leader for assists in SLU history by the end of this season, pretty much barring anything, knock on wood, he plays a full season. You're looking at a guy who this year is going to mark himself as the career leader at SLU in assists. It's legit. I think it's going to be fun to watch him get out and run as he sets that record this year.
Well, we've been fortunate over the years to have great ones, and I'll probably leave somebody out, so forgive me. But Jim Roeder and H. Waldman and Marquis Perry and Jordan Jett, and I've left out a handful. We've had some terrific point guards, but Yuri Collins has a chance to be the best. And I don't like to say best or worst and try and have those media hooks that we go for all the time. Everything's got to be the greatest ever or the worst ever. I don't like to go there, but I think it's pretty clear who this young man is. And I think he's going to get himself established this year as a dual threat. I'm told he's been working with Erwin Claggett, one of the all-time, maybe the best Billiken shooter of all time. And I think it's shown already in preseason and in practice. And I'm confident saying Yuri's going to average in double figures this year. So there's 3 or 4 points a game that you're going to be taken over for Perkins, missed points, and the assists will come too. And moreover, not just what he does for his own points, but what he does to the opposition defense, that they now have to guard him straight up. They can't sag off like they did the first 2 seasons. They've got to get out and guard him, which negates double teams, certainly double teams off him. And that's going to be a big boon to the offense.
One of the biggest things for Yuri Collins, and a lot of those assists hopefully are going to be coming on passes to Gibson Jimerson. A big thing that I know Travis has been harping on at practice, both in the interviews, but also I know for a fact in practice, is that he wants Gibson shooting the ball more, and he wants Gibson taking the shots when he has them. He mentioned earlier today that Gibson could be seeing 5 to 6 to 7 more shots than they planned on him seeing this year, and that was even with Javonte in the fold. So when you talk about 6 to 7 more shots, your expectations for the output and how you see Gibson Jimerson in this offense in the ways – essentially I'm trying to ask, what are the different ways that you've already seen them try, and how do you think they will get him involved and get him open for looks throughout this season? Because if it's going to be 6 or 7 shots on top of it, I'm expecting at least 10 field goals, if not to upwards of 12 on the high end per game from Jimerson. And you're going to have to manufacture some of those in interesting looks, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. One of the things that they're doing that will ultimately help the three is when and obviously if you've scouted the Billikens, hey, we got to put a guy in his shirt. We can't let him breathe. Well, what do you do that when a guy's overplaying you? You cut and go around him. And we've already seen a real connection between Gibson and Yuri on back cuts going underneath. You say, yeah, but that's not the three. Yeah, but if he shows the ability to do that and be successful, it goes back to making them play straight up and maybe just enough space when a guy's on him to prevent the back cut or even a drive, which Jimerson is showing he's capable of, to give him those looks. But you're right. Can a team take any one player away? Can they take a guy out of a game? Yeah, of course they can. But that's why scoring from all the other spots on the floor from the other guys, the Billiken attack has to be. And here's a weird thing. With Perkins being the focus point and now being gone, and if the other players step up and you're coming at the opposition from all 5 positions on the scoring front, that's going to open thing up. If we were going to place a bet, a $5 bet, a milkshake bet on who's going to be the leading scorer, probably everybody's first inclination is to go Jordan Nesbitt. But I'm telling you, if Nesbitt's scoring, if the bigs are scoring, if TJ Hargrove continues to shoot it and attack the basket, if Yuri Collins is scoring, why isn't Gibson Jimerson scoring at a very high level? I think that if you were going to take a second bet, if I took the Nesbitt square, the next square to put your money on might be Gibson Jimerson.
I think it's a very old school question, so I think you're going to love it. How much of his season is going to be less about scheme and more about confidence?
Confidence is the word, triple underlined, italics, quotation marks, however, bold letter, however we can make it stand out. Confidence. Here's something I think I've noticed. And I want you and the fans to get a hold of us on Claves Online when we do these shows and tell me if you see it. I feel like it's the old card game bromide, and that is study long, study wrong. It seems to me when Gibson's on the quick release, off the screen, the quick spot up, it seems like his percentage is much higher than when he has it. He's wide open. He eyes it, takes aim, and fires. Again, I want everybody else to observe too. I've already admitted I'm not a scout, but it seems like on the quick stop and pop, off the screen, catch and shoot, run to the corner, catch and shoot, it seems like those rhythm shots are far more productive than when he's absolutely wide open. I hope he hits them all. I hope that if there is some truth to what I'm seeing, that he overcomes it. But I want you to watch, and I want our viewers to watch and see if that's not the case. Either way, it comes down to confidence. And the reason I bring up the style of shot equating to confidence is confidence sometimes is when you think too much about it. And when you don't have time to think, you don't have time to not have confidence. And I think that might be a key for him.
Yeah. And the big thing,
a long-winded theory, but see what you think as time goes on.
I feel like the two-man game is going to be prone to the long-winded theory. Just saddle in. That's just going to happen.
Okay. Fair enough. That's
also,
fair.
I'll build onto the long-winded theory. He's going to be less open this year because teams are going to key on him. Therefore, he's going to play and shoot even better, which makes no sense. But as you said, if he's not thinking, he's just got to shoot it. There it is.
Let me remind people about Terence Hargrove Jr., a guy whose effervescent enthusiasm and joy in the game sometimes belies his work ethic. This kid works his tail off. He's made himself a three-point shooter. He's the returning leading three-point shooter percentage-wise, over 40% last year. That's not a fluke when you play all season long.
He's going to be the starting four.
There's no doubt about it. So when you start to get this kind of balance on the floor, you create nightmares for the opposition. And that's exactly what this team wants to do.
Fans are going to have to help me keep track throughout the season of this. I think 34-minute mark is going to be the latest for a long time that you actually get TJ Hargrove's name in on the show. I think that's going to be that's the first time we've mentioned him, and I have a feeling that's going to be the latest by a long shot for a long time.
He's one of my favorite people. He's one of my favorite Billikens of all time. And that goes back to the effervescent enthusiasm, um, the way in which he plays, and he's just a great guy. He's just a great guy. And I used to watch him work out in the summers with the Pure Sweat folks. And he and Yuri worked out together before they were Billikens. And I got to watch that a lot as my son worked out there too. And got to know him a little bit. And again, with COVID, I feel like I don't know the players well at all like I used to. And that's a point of frustration for me. But TJ Hargrove's the real deal. And if you get a chance to invest in him emotionally and literally now with NIL, I would say do it. He is your guy. I'm telling you, he is your guy.
TJ Hargrove, come up, find like a headband company to work with, and I will buy one.
There you go.
Because sometimes I need it.
Well, why don't you create them and you guys go into business together and you hire him?
There we go. That's Let's get him a 2-man game headband.
Hargrove hair.
First piece of merchandise.
Hargrove hair.
I like that. Hargrove hair. That's good. You gotta give TJ that next time at practice.
Hey,
one thing I want to get in.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
No, you go.
One thing I want to get into that's a little dense, but it's a big point on how SLU's going to play now, which is Travis mentioned playing faster.
Yeah.
And I want to know how you think that's going to manifest itself. And also, are there some players, TJ Hargrove, I think was going to come up in this part of the discussion no matter what, even if we didn't bring him up yet. How do you see them playing faster, and how do you see that actually benefiting certain guys? And being honest, how do you think maybe that style might actually hurt certain other players?
Well, yeah, you look at some. Well, there's not very many that can't get out and run. I think the key is when it gets to philosophy, kids always say they want to do the running game. Always. Until they learn the things you have to be good at to be able to run it right, then they go, oh, what was that half court set, coach?
Yeah, right.
Playing the running game isn't run, shoot, and holler like you're over at the rec center, folks. That's the quick way to 20 losses. The great full court running game is run with surgical precision and is deadly and is lethal. And that's what this team wants to do and will need to do. Again, I'll refer back a little callback from earlier in the show. You got to defend to get loose balls. I think this is a team that'll ball hawk really well, but our bigs have got to get help on the defensive boards. For instance, okay, let's say you're Hargrove, Nesbitt, Jimerson, Collins, and Okoro's out there. Well, the ball goes up. How do you blame those guys for not wanting to cheat and start flying down the floor?
That's kind of been my question the entire time, is because it's such a defensive rebounding is one thing, but also Travis talks so much about offensive rebounding, and I'm wondering how do you balance being a strong rebounding team while starting to emphasize the transition game more so than you were prior?
It takes the head, and it takes kids with vision and who want to understand how to play the game right. All four of you can't run and leave poor. I think the kids are calling Francis Okoro. You can't leave Franco by himself. He'll get a bunch by himself, but he's going to need help understanding where you are on the floor when the shot goes up, where the rebound's likely to go, who to box out, which of your guys is in the best position to release and get down the floor. It's the cerebral part of the game. And that's the part that is going to be interesting to watch and see if this team is capable of doing it. I firmly believe they are. I've been lucky, and there's probably not very much video, so it's going to be hard to prove me wrong. When I was at Louisiana Tech with Karl Malone, we had a 6'4" point guard, Wayne Smith, who was a marvelous, marvelous point guard. And it was one of the greatest precision fast breaks I've ever seen in college basketball. Now, it helps when Karl Malone is is 240 pounds and can run like the wind, gets every defensive rebound, hits the outlet, and without breaking stride, dunks it on the other end, getting the second pass.
That helps.
And it sounds crazy, like I made that up. I saw it dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And with your shooter, Allen Davis, going to the wing, and your other big, a 7-footer, trailing in case they can't get it to Malone. And now you've got a precision fast break that was absolutely deadly. I've seen it. I know what it takes. This team has the elements to do it. And then it's a matter of, are they willing to make the emotional sacrifice and the cerebral look at the game to understand what it takes?
See, and for me, that was the one silver lining I took away from what happened last week, was breaking down some of these players. Yuri, anytime you have a guy who is quick as he is and has that kind of passing skill in the fast break and out in transition, that's huge. Nesbitt, being the athlete he is, maybe being more comfortable in the freewheeling, kind of more open style of transition than a half-court game right now as a younger player.
Right.
TJ being a guy that you can toss up an alley-oop to at any time. Okoro being the same way. Jimerson shooting to the corner. I mean, all of these guys seem to have a part of their game that fits perfectly into picking up the pace and playing a little bit faster. Martin Linson as an outlet passer, picking up the rebound and going the other way. I mean, there's guys throughout this lineup, Jones being a point guard, Williams being a shooter. There's so many ways that I see these guys can honestly just get the points that we're talking about when you have to make up for Jordan and Hassan and now Javonte. This is where these guys can I think make a quick step, because there's parts of their game that play so well to playing a more upbeat style. Now the big thing is going to be with the Travis Ford team, are they defending well enough on the other end at the same time and getting out in transition and defending in transition? Because I have a feeling that if they struggle and they start leaking out too many times, Travis is going to slow it down, and that's maybe where we see the Linson and Okoro front line and things like that.
And there are some terrific teams they'll play that have good transition defense. So you try to run, the shot's not there, you get into your offense, and that's where it's got to be key. Also, the running, if you do have a given game where you're very successful, keep in mind too, then you using more players and keeping fresh legs out there. I really believe the 8-man rotation will be expanded, and it will be because of good things, not bad things.
I like to hear that. You mentioned the schedule. Let's get into a little bit of the schedule, obviously, because we're here doing a SLU season preview, not just talking about some of the negatives or how they're going to replace, but what's going to happen here as we look forward to. One of the big things, obviously, right off the bat, the non-conference schedule was a huge talking point in the preseason as a boon, something that could be used as a pro going forward into March. How do you now see this preseason, not preseason schedule, excuse me. How do you see this non-conference schedule moving forward to start the season? Do you think it's now maybe you're looking at it more of a grind in certain places? How has it changed maybe in the last week of how you view a non-conference schedule that was very positive again, just a month ago?
It's freaking brutal. It is a gauntlet, brother.
That's a change. Yeah.
This is going to be brutal. So let me break down the season real quick. 18 conference games. We know about that. We'll talk about that at Christmas time. 13 non-conference games. In my view, there are 8 of those that I'll call what do you want to call them? Strength of schedule builders. And we're going to need SOS getting through this. Strength of schedule builders. I think there are 8 of them, which leaves 5. Without trying to make an insult, people know about bye games and all those kinds of things. I think there are 5 games, though, then, well, it's a bye game. But you got to win them, because if you give any of those away, now you got to get one of your back-breaking games. You got to get one of those back from the lost column. So I'll break them down in segments. Central Arkansas, Harris Stowe, Eastern Illinois. Respect anybody that comes into your building. You know what you got to do. Then you go to Memphis. Will this team be ready for Memphis? It might be on November 16th. That might be a little bit early. but it might be early for Penny Hardaway too, as he's trying to put new players into his mix. Wishful thinking, perhaps. We'll
he struggled a little bit though too.
Yeah, that's one of the 8. I'll let you count them up. Mercer is not one of the 8. Illinois State is not one of the 8. Buffalo, I really believe Buffalo will beat Stephen F. Austin in Cancun. Buffalo, they're one of the 8. Well, how's that going to? They're going to win their conference or contend for it. Buffalo's legit, folks.
Yep.
Go to Boise State. Everybody talks about San Diego State in the Mountain West. Boise State thinks they can win that conference. UAB, they believe they can win Conference USA. My guys at Louisiana Tech may have something to say about it, but UAB believes they can win Conference USA. December 7th, Belmont, they're going to win the Ohio Valley Conference. Boston College, one of the 8. Boston College is not great, Rock, but they're in the ACC. Their strength of schedule will be great. So even if their record's down, it's not going to kill you like playing some other bad team. So you see why I include them in the 8, because they're in the ACC. Auburn comes in. Jesus. Are you kidding me?
They're also from a conference that has some prestige, I believe.
It's going to be them in Kentucky, in my opinion, battling it out to win the SEC. Auburn may have the best set of big men. They have the best set of big men in the country. Our guys will really be challenged there. Then you go to Las Vegas to play a one-off random game where you could have driven 2 hours and met in Kirksville or something and played Drake. Got to go out to Vegas to play Drake. They're going to win the Missouri Valley Conference. Folks, those 8 games, why do I have 10 fingers up? Those 8 games.
What's the span of time? What's the span of time on those 8 games?
You play those 8, starting with Memphis. You got a little bit of a break, but then you go, let's say Buffalo the day before Thanksgiving, and then the 22nd of December with Drake. So 6 of the 8 in a month. So now Travis Ford and his group, they intend to win all 8. They'll have a game plan to win all 8. If they win all 8, this is a Sweet 16 team or better.
Wow.
But you have so many new things to accomplish, you don't have to win all 8 because of how strong these teams are to make a strong case for March Madness. And we say, why are you talking about March Madness now? Well, that's why this schedule was made this way.
Yep.
Because all these games matter in a mid-major league to get into postseason. That's why these games matter. So, folks, keep your own track on these 8. Memphis, Buffalo, Boise, UAB, Belmont, Boston College, Auburn, and Drake. Though what you do there is going to go a long way to see what you're going to do at setting you up for March Madness.
Let's talk a little bit about the early games in the schedule. Obviously, we talked about it at the opening of the show. 3 games in 4 days. We're gonna reconvene to record on Thursday to talk about the first 2 games, but not getting into matchups necessarily, because you talk about you got to take care of business in these 3 games. So my question for you then is, what are you going to be looking for in these 3 games when it comes to lineup combinations? Maybe it's the old, I know it's hockey, but Doug Armstrong always used to talk about pairings. Is it guys you see you're looking for? Who is Travis pairing with Yuri? For the 2-man game. What wings are working together, or what are your takeaways usually from these early season games, and more so, what are your takeaways with this kind of team where you don't really know and you've only had a few practices with this new look to see what they're going to be this year?
I don't think Travis will make any excuses or look for excuses if the team doesn't play efficiently. I think even in a feeling out period, even as for us fans, and remember, these guys are new to us. Travis has been with them since the end of, since the summer began. So he thinks he has a feel for him, and I'm sure he does. So he won't take, we're getting used to each other as an excuse to play bad basketball. I promise you that. So against Central Arkansas and Harris Stowe, you don't play their game. You play your game, and you play at a high level with a high offensive and defensive efficiency. That's what he's going to look for. Moreover, that's what he's going to demand to see. So I think that's what we should be looking for too. Offensive and defensive efficiency. And then secondarily, who's working with who and figuring out the matchups and the lineups and all those kinds of things. But to reiterate, oh, well, these guys are new to each other. That will not fly. I promise you.
No, Travis, there's no chance you hear that from any of the players. I don't think the players won't even dream of saying anything like that. They know the game far too well to be slipping in anything like that. Before we talk,
you get in there. You didn't run the offense, right? You don't know the offense. That I'm telling you, that will not be an excuse.
Yeah,
it will be an excuse to have a seat.
Yeah, I don't want to be in the meeting room if I don't want to be in Travis's office if you say that at any point, during the game.
That's exactly
Coach,
right.
we only started running that set 10 days ago. That's not going to fly with Travis.
Yeah, sit down, bring your playbook, and watch.
Speaking of which, before we transition into some more general talk, as we wrap up kind of our season preview here with SLU, more localized recently. SLU practiced the last few times. Any big takeaways from what you've seen in practice?
Well, one of my big takeaways, I gave it away early, and that is Andre Lorenzen.
Okay.
I think now this is just me as an observer, and I don't know if you're aware. I think you are. I don't know if a lot of the fans are, but every shot taken in practice is recorded. Camera. There are sensors on shoes that plot your location. Cameras and all this technical mumbo jumbo that I don't get. But every shot and from where every shot is taken is logged. So I don't know if the facts back up my impression, but Lorenzen has been the lights out shooter in practice. The lights out shooter.
And he's got the size, like you said. They've talked a lot about how there's not much difference between the 1 and the 4 in this offense, but having a stretch 4, a real stretch 4 at that size, it's still in the college game, especially in the A10. I think that could be maybe a later season cog that gives them a look, especially in the conference season, that maybe they don't have here earlier in the non-conference schedule.
The other thing you mentioned earlier, but to what I've seen in practice that could carry over, and that is the bigs playing together. So a lot in scrimmage, you'll see, let's say, for instance, Linson and Traore, maybe probably more like Linson and Okoro against Traore and Lorenzen, and playing bigs together. And I think that those are some of the things we can maybe look for. And you had mentioned earlier, because Travis talked about it, and they have been working on it. And we'll see how it transpires in real games.
I'm not the biggest fan of it, just because I think the playing fast and playing 4 out makes sense with the roster. But also, I guess there's an idea maybe that they're my big thing is fouls and stamina and things like that. Because, I mean, you have the minutes you have at the 5. Those are going to have to be the full game. You can't really get chintzy and play, TJ Hargrove as a small ball 5. You got to play one of those 2 guys, unless, again, I'm honestly surprised, and I don't know how much of this is forced. I'm not trying to say that it's just being forced because of the injury, but I'm honestly surprised how much we've heard. I'm surprised we're hearing so much about Lorenzen from you, and I'm surprised when I kind of intimated to it that you even went so far as to Traore, because I honestly thought that those guys were, 2022 Billikens at first, at the most. And so I'm a little bit surprised. Happily, I think you can bring in these guys, and I think a deep team playing fast is how you win games as the Billikens this year. But I am a little bit surprised how quickly they've kind of had those guys, and we've heard about them, from people who are watching practice.
Yeah, and again, I'm not suggesting that either Traore or Lorenzen are going to come in and play 18 minutes a game. I'm just saying that what I see from these guys are real positives that can be contributors, if not this fall, later in the winter, and certainly by next year. But as their confidence grows and their skill level gets better, these aren't, as I said before, the project guys. These guys are projects that are with that have an expectation of delivering at some point in time.
Well, so that's kind of our SLU preview, everybody. Here in the two-man game with Rammer and Rocc, about 55 minutes of solid SLU talk here. We're going to transition a little bit here. We're not going very far because there was something Bob mentioned there towards the end when we were talking about the schedule that I wanted to get into, and that is the conference that SLU's playing in the A10. It's lost some steam over the last couple months as the first series of ratings have come out from all the different pundits across the college game. And in fact, one phrase popped up that you were very disconcerted with, and that is a one-bid league. Your thoughts on the future of the A10 for this season and going forward, which I think a lot of fans, especially when we're on the air, a lot of fans constantly mention different conferences and moving conferences and realignment and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it was very concerning to me because this has been a multi-bid league, I think all but 1 year. And I looked it up one time, like the last 26 or 7 years.
Yeah, I think it's two. I think it's like two.
Yeah. And there was like more than half of those. It was 3 or more teams. And for people to say this is trending to be a one bid league, for this particular year, they mentioned losing Javante Perkins. They mentioned the 2 good players that VCU lost. I think that the bottom half of this league has got to step up a little bit. And I'm certain the commissioner, Bernadette McGlade, has talked to some of these programs about, we don't want to be the Colonial, right? We want to be the Big East. And it can't just be Dayton and VCU every year, and SLU trending to be one of the perennial contenders now that Travis Ford is here. But Davidson, you had done some good things, but Davidson's got to take the next step. And Phil Martelli lost his luster, and St. Joe's feels like they're lost. LaSalle and Fordham, what are they doing? George Washington, what is happening there? The bottom half of the league has absolutely got to step up, or maybe these pundits will end up being right, or worse is the top 3 or 4 teams will say, you're making it too tough on us to get into the NCAA tournament because our conference schedule becomes so weak that we're on the bubble every single year, and we got to find greener pastures. You hope it doesn't come to that. I'm not trying to be a doomsayer. I'm just saying if you extrapolate some of the negative things, that you have to be aware that it's possible.
Yeah, it's the last thing you want to hear, and it's the last thing I know SLU fans want to hear, because there's already a lot of, again, conference realignment is rampant, and it's mostly football moved, but there's a lot of reasons that the people in basketball want to have these conversations, and I can understand it. And the A10, if that were to happen, if they were to lose kind of that steam that they've had and that they've been building up over the last 20 years, I think there'd be a lot of people who would want to keep carping about the Big East. And I know you hear that a lot, and you're not going to stop hearing that from a lot of different people in town, just because that's the passion for St. Louis basketball. But nonetheless, I think it's a piece of conversation that it's going to get handled behind closed doors, essentially, is kind of what I'm getting at. And there's not a lot of reason to speculate.
Two keys. You got to win, and you got to win big. That means deep runs in the NCAA tournament. We've never been to the second weekend.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You got to get to the Sweet 16 and deeper. You take a look at, how did Butler get into the Big East? They had a hot coach and they had a deep run. That's the only reason. And you know, it was a kick in the butt losing Javonte Perkins, because this is a team that everyone thought could make a run. Last year was supposed to be the year, the COVID month. Look, we get it. So this group and Travis have a challenge. Do you have the experience to make a deep run like you had last year? Maybe not. Maybe not. I want to underline maybe. But what you got to do is still be good, still win big games against big opponents, get into postseason, do damage, and get ready to keep pushing and keep climbing for the next year. That's the way good things will come to you. And you got to be filling up Chaifetz Arena. 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 a night won't get it done. When other leagues around the country see 10,000 a night, that's the other way they take notice.
And final SLU point, actually, because you mentioned the game, and we're broadcasting this on Tuesday afternoon. So later tonight, if you can get there, make sure you get there a little bit earlier. They are going to be honoring Fort Stewart prior to this evening's game. So if you can get to Chaifetz a little bit earlier, packing Chaifetz is going to be important the entire season. Tonight's going to be a very special night, so maybe get out there a little bit early if you can make it, and if you can't, still come out and obviously cheer on the Billikens as they begin their season tonight. And we're obviously going to be talking a lot about the SLU Billikens this season. You're going to hear another episode on Friday afternoon. We're going to record it on Thursday evening, and we're going to talk a lot about SLU, but also we're going to talk about some NBA throughout the season. One NBA player I do want to talk about, this is, of course, SLU related, because I'm sticking here with the SLU theme for the day. Jordan Goodwin, not playing with the big club yet, but he's in the G League. And the start he's had so far through 2 games, 30 points, 30.5 points averaging at 32 points and 29 points, 8 rebounds per game, 2 assists, 2.5 steals through 2 games, 56% from the field, 50% from deep on 8 of 16, and he's also 4 for 4 from the charity stripe. I mean, how about the start from Jordan Goodwin? Talk about a way to come in and tell a coaching staff, bring me up. Let's get that 2-way contract figured out. Let's see if we can make it happen. I mean, Jordan Goodwin has come out outscoring any of his college games right out of the gate in the G League.
And I got to tell you, I'm a little disappointed, Rocc. Where are the rebounds? No,
he got 8 per game.
Yeah, that's weak. That's weak.
I know.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Now.
The best rebounding guard we've seen in a generation, probably. And now he kept working and has added the jump shot to his game. I'm so excited for him. A young man that I've never seen a desire to win and excel. I mean, a burning desire, facing adversity throughout his career and always coming through, always the hardest worker on the team, always the first guy there, the last guy to leave, and just a terrific guy, just a terrific person. Man, I'm going to be in line. You and I are going to be racing to whatever store sells them to get the first Wizards Goodwin jersey.
I'm so excited for the guy. He's incredible. He's such a hard worker. I mean, clearly he's been working on the parts of his game he understood. That's the little things he's been doing have obviously started paying off. I mean, he was a spark plug in that first game. They were down 16-0 before he scored the first points of the game, and then he led them to a win in that 32-point game. I mean, he was balling out. He was scoring in different ways. I love what he's doing. He had 4 steals in the second game after only getting 1 in the first game. I've made this comment multiple times. I do not care if it's in the NBA or not. 10 years from now, I don't care if it's in the NBA or Italy or what have you. 10 years from now, some poor point guard is going to have his day ruined by Jordan Goodwin for like 5 steals. It's going to happen still a decade from now. He's going to be 30. He's going to be 32. And I don't know where it's going to be, but he's going to be ruining some opposing point guard's day. And because that's what the kid's going to do. And apparently, if he can shoot like this, he's going to be doing that in the NBA. And the chance for him, he made some comments. If you can go find this, it's really easy. If you just go to the Capital City Go-Go, that's the name of the G League team. If you just go to their website, it's the one piece of post-game video they've posted, but it was Jordan Goodwin talking about his friendship with Bradley Beal. It was an incredible piece of audio. And just the idea, obviously we're homers, but I have no problem with it when we talk about this topic.
It's
the idea of him, darn right. The idea of him balling out like this, getting called up, and then being on an NBA court with Bradley Beal while being coached by Wes Unseld Jr. I mean, Earl Austin is going to be. I want to go watch a Wizards game with him. When, and I'm saying when because if he keeps doing this, that'll be the case soon. When that happens, I want to watch a Wizards game with Earl, because to see a St. Louis kid in Bradley, a SLU kid and a St. Louis kid in Jordan, and then obviously having, the relation, a cousin in Wes Unseld Jr. for Earl. That's cool for St. Louis. I would love to watch it with a guy like Earl. I mean, to have that potential, that's a storyline that we're going to be following the entire year, because that's just fun.
Well, what we're going to have to do, I'm sure Earl's already done it. I'll just call him and ask him when we're done here. Are the Wizards playing at home somewhere around February 1st or 3rd?
Oh, yeah.
Because the Billikens will be in Fairfax playing at George Mason. So we may have to extend a trip.
There it is. Man, it's gonna be awesome. So good for Jordan. Obviously, we hope he keeps balling out. We're gonna talk a lot more NBA at some point, but that's what we got on today's show. Very SLU-centric show, but I had a lot of fun, Bob. We've gone a little bit longer than I expected, but hey, I think that's the first episode of the two-man game with Rammer and Rocc.
Yeah, two-man game. We may not, we'll get down there and do the pick and roll with anybody.
Oh yeah, you know it. And like we said, with Earl, and we're talking about NBA, so maybe some old St. Louis guys that people have known, like Rob Fisher with the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll bring here, and we'll turn it into the three-man weave a little bit every once in a while.
And we'll get some of my friends in the business on. One of the guys I want to talk to a lot, because I'm a real honk for the Mountain West. You'll see that as the season. I love watching those late games, and the voice of the Broncos at Boise State. Bob Beeler's an old friend of mine. He used to be the voice at UMass. And
we'll get what you need on a Wednesday night? A 7th hour of college basketball. The Mountain West is fantastic. If you're a sport, because here's the thing: whether you're college basketball or college football, if you are a honk for either of those sports, everybody who's like a honk about those sports, they love a Mountain West team, because there's nothing better than an entire game of football and then no one else is playing. Oh, Hawaii's playing. Okay, cool. Let's go. Yeah. Here we go. So I'm not shocked at all that a basketball guy like you is like, oh, one more game. This is fantastic. I'm sure the Rammer household is not a fan of Boise State, BYU for the 50th time. But I tell you what, I bet the Utes get a big, when they're playing, you're happy.
And let me go one step further west. If I can get a Gonzaga St. Mary's game at 10:30 at night, I am all over it.
Now, see, that's just fundamentals.
Okay, that's going to wrap it up. We'll be back on Friday, and we'll see if the Billikens, rated as efficient on both ends of the court in their first two games, back-to-back games. First time I've ever seen it in a non-tournament situation. And so we'll relate that to everybody. For those going to the game tonight and on Wednesday, have a great time. Be loud. It's great to have you back in Chaifetz Arena. And two-man game with Rammer and Rocc will be back with you on Friday right here on Claibs Online.